Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. SMU on the road playing Penn State, first round of the college football playoff. Still, two things, right off the bat stand out to me. One, SMU going up north to the state of Pennsylvania in the middle of December. Like, how many times has SMU played in an environment like that in terms of weather? But I think more importantly, and I'm not saying SMU can't, but when's the last time we've seen SMU play in a hostile environment like they are going to see in a college football playoff game at home in Happy Valley? As Michigan fans ourselves, we've been on the road watching a Penn State game in Happy. It does not get more hostile and loud than what you're going to see. And so weather, crowd noise, environment, those are some things that kind of pop up to me right out of the page. Now, getting into these two teams, both teams played relatively good football last night. Look at SMU outgained Clemson, especially played very well in the second half. You can say the exact same thing against Penn State. You put up 37 points, 523 yards. It's about as good as the Penn State offense has looked in a very long time. If you're a Penn State fan, fired up to get into this one now. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast breaking down these games, previewing them, predicting them. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the boys means the absolute world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, I have a pretty obvious starting point that I want to get into, and that is this Penn State rushing attack that just gave Oregon absolute fits on Saturday night. Can they get it going like that again against SMU? This is really big for a couple of different reasons. Now, I think it's first worth noting SMU's front seven is legit. It's one of the best run-stopping defenses that you see in the country, only allowing 2.9 yards per carry. That's number 3 in the country. Big number 5, Elijah Roberts, is an absolute game wrecker on the defensive line. They're going to move him all around. Why I think the rushing attack is so important, one, because that's what Penn State wants to do. Like, they want to establish the run, lean on that offensive line. But I think more importantly, think about game flow and how this game can look. SMU wants a lot of drives. They want a lot of plays. They kind of want to drag you into a little bit of a shootout. Penn State with this rushing attack at home has the chance to kind of play this football game on their terms. Run the football, control the time possession, keep Kevin Jennings in that high-flying offense off the football field. If they can do that and run the football effectively, I think it puts them in a really good spot to win this football game.
Because really where SMU gets dangerous is when they can run with a lot of pace on offense. You saw them get to that in the second half against Clemson because they couldn't stay on the field. I think you look at Penn State, I'm with you, the best I've seen their offense look in a long time. I think they were physical. Drew Allar was making big plays through the air, like making those big plays that they haven't been able to make, like those 3rd and longs, that touchdown throw late in the game. Like that type of play, we just haven't seen Penn State quarterbacks make them enough. And frankly, I thought the wideouts are playing good too. I thought Wallace had a good game.
Yeah, very good.
Plays. Obviously, Tyler Warren's going to do his thing, but everything was clicking for that passing attack, and the rushing attack was obvious.
Yes. So my take on Drew, and there might be some people with differing takes, and I really disagree with them. They'll look at the stat line, say 2 interceptions, they're around a 50% completion percentage. Dill, I'd rather have that version of Drew than the version of Drew that we saw last year. Yes, the version of Drew. And do you want to throw 2 interceptions? Do you want to throw an interception that gets returned to the 1? No, absolutely not. You want to clean it up. That version of Drew that is making high-level throws and making impacting plays, that's how this Penn State team gets really dangerous in the playoffs. They'll be solid with the version of Drew that you had in 2023, but if you want to bang with some of the best teams in the country, that's how Drew's going to have to play. And he gave that off, that Penn State team last night, every ability to win that football game with what they did on the offensive side of the football. The big question here to me is, can some of these Penn State wide receivers continue to step up? You noted it. Harrison Wallace, probably the best game that we've seen him play in quite a long time for Penn State. If there's a place that you might want to attack SMU, it's vertically down the field on the boundary. You look at SMU, yes, they are very stingy with the completion percentage, 57% given up, but they will give you some explosive plays. You saw Clemson find some of those explosive plays. Can Drew find those explosive plays? That's probably a question mark you're looking at here.
And that always was going to be the question for this Penn State team.
Yeah.
You kind of figured they were going to be able to control the ball running on the ground like they were able to for most of the year. And even going into last year when their offense obviously struggled, so you still have big physical offensive lines. again, that's what's made Penn State a little bit different is they've been able to get to some of those plays. And again, their boundary receivers certainly need to play better. There's not going to be an argument. I think they have been better in the last couple of weeks of the season, but that's still a group that I think
it's one of those things that if this Penn State team is knocking off, making the championship and beating some of the best teams in the country, these wide receivers are going to need to make plays. And it kind of comes down to like SMU's been really good against the run. That Penn State offensive line last night was dominant. They were just moving bodies off the line of scrimmage. How does SMU? That's kind of the question mark you have with an SMU team that has jumped up from the G5 to the Power 4 level. They've acquitted themselves well along the line of scrimmage, in my opinion, throughout the season, especially in the ACC. They haven't seen an offensive line with these kind of bodies.
And frankly, I'd argue a rushing attack in general because I look at the way Singleton and Katron Allen can run the ball themselves along with Tyler Warren when they work him in the backfield. Like, that's a really tough, heavy rushing attack that, again, they keep both those guys fresh. They run really well right into the fourth quarter of that. I mean, they wore down Oregon really well last night. And Oregon, again, probably not the deepest interior defensive line, but they're pretty much deep everywhere else. You saw Penn State kind of break them. I wonder if you can – I mean – break Oregon, I think.
Especially if SMU wants to run with pace and put their defense out there a lot. That seems to me the storyline of this game. Now, we're not used to talking about this, but this Penn State defense struggled a little bit against Oregon. Not my initial take, and I rewatched the game this morning, was, look, Dillon Gabriel just played really, really good. And Oregon has a lot of talent on the outside. And I'm not saying Penn State's defense played elite, but Dillon Gabriel just was playing at another. That was probably the best version of Dillon Gabriel we've seen all year. And to a certain extent, there's nothing you can do. But like, this SMU offense is going to test you in a lot of different ways. I'm falling in love with this SMU offense for a couple of different reasons. One, they're so fast everywhere. And they're one of those rare teams that, yes, they have a few real difference makers, but when they lost RJ Maryland, it was kind of just a by committee approach. They have 7 different pass catchers that have caught for over 300 yards. Name me another team that has that kind of number. They spread the ball out. They're going to find their matchups. If you're Penn State, 2 things. One, how do you deal with Kevin Jennings, who is not only elite scrambling and running with the football, but is elite getting out of the pocket and throwing off platform? And so you got to figure out a way to, hey, we want to pin our ears back and get after him, but we also don't want to let him hurt us as an athlete. I think Abdul Carter's certainly going to play a role in that. And then I think, secondly, you got to take good angles on these ball carriers, whether it's the running back Rashad Smith, whether it's these wide receivers, because if you take a bad angle, they'll take a 15-yard play and make it a 50-yard touchdown. That's the 2 things that I'm looking at in this particular matchup.
That's why I wonder, like, what style of defense Penn State's even going to play, because I know they want to be aggressive. I know they want to get their guys around the line of scrimmage and getting after it. But it did feel like there was too much space for that Oregon offense to work, especially over the middle. I mean, you saw Tez Johnson really just ripping them up, and he was catching the ball with too much space. And again, I think Penn State's good enough up front, frankly, to not play super aggressive from the back end. Like, their front 4 should be able to consistently get a lot of pressure on this SMU team, like Clemson was doing in the first half. Now, Clemson wore down a little bit because they couldn't stay on the field, and you saw their defense relent, or their defensive line stop taking that game over. That's why I think it gets important for Penn State to play complementary football, where, again, they're keeping that defense fresh. Because if they're fresh, I think they're going to be a huge problem for this SMU offensive line that I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question heading into this game, and it was the biggest question for SMU heading into the year was, all right, we kind of know they have the quarterback play and the specialist, the skill on the outside to be a very good Power 4 team. I think the big question is when you jump up from the G5 to the P4 is line of scrimmage play. Again, they've looked good. This is a different animal in terms of line of scrimmage play on both sides of the football.
Well, and it also, again, they look good when they're playing their way, when they're playing with that pace and they're keeping defensive lines off balance and wearing them out.
You're going to need to do a little you're going to have to move the pocket. You're going to have to work the quick game into there. That's what Oregon did a really good job of that, the quick game. So, hey, we don't want to sit in the pocket and try to pass protect against guys like Abdul Carter. We're just going to get the ball out hot. That's probably like SMU moving Kevin Jennings out of the pocket, relying on that quick game. it's probably what you're going to have to do. And if you're Penn State, just don't let him have the quick game and maybe force Kevin Jennings to push the ball down the field a little bit more. That's kind of my my matchup or my take on that matchup. Dill, let's get into the pick here. SMU 9-point dogs on the road. I guess I'll start. I really do like Penn State. Dill, last night, I know Penn State lost that football game. That was the best version of Penn State I've seen, especially on offense, in a very, very long time. And you talk about SMU going to the state of Pennsylvania in the middle of December with this crowd against this Penn State team with this line of scrimmage play. Give me Penn State to cover the 9 points.
Yeah, I like Penn State too. And I just think they can dictate how this game is played. And that, frankly, not enough teams have been able to do that to SMU. SMU's played their brand of ball. They've been able to go up and down the field on teams. I don't think they've played a team that's as physically developed, if you will, or physically complete, I should say, in this Penn State offense. And how, if they can have those 5+ minute drives relatively consistently, I don't really see how SMU gets their foot on the pedal, if you will, on offense. And that really, to me, is such a huge part of
that's SMU's avenue to winning. It is like, can we make this into a shootout game, and can we play fast, and can we get a lot of drives? And Penn State kind of has the ability to maybe take that away. Going to be a good one. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.